Hi, this tutorial will hopefully define LODs or level of detail for your assets and how you use them in Trainz. There's a couple of different ways you can do it, and we'll get started on showing you how to do these. So first of all, we have 4 levels of detail here that we've got for this simple asset. So it's just a rock, and we've gone through and we've made each of these. So if we just have a look without selecting it, that's our highest one. That's going to be our LOD 0. It's at 152 tries. Well, 152 is for the selected, 372 is for all total. So those 4. What we want to do is just obviously see the individual ones. So this one is 152 triangles, and that's LOD level 1. Then we've got LOD level 2 sitting at 120 triangles, and if you switch between 2 of them, you do notice a little bit of a change. Then we've got LOD level 2, which is sitting at 74 triangles, and that's quite noticeable from the first one. And then you've got LOD level 3, which is sitting at 26 triangles. And it's very important to remember that you won't be looking at the object this close to the camera at most of these LOD levels. So LOD level 1, you will definitely look at it this close. LOD level 2, you'll be much further back, probably even further than that, depending on your settings, and we'll show you how to set that up. LOD level 3, well, 0, 1, 2, so this is really LOD 2, but it's level 3. You know, you'll be somewhere around here, so you can hardly really notice what it looks like. And LOD level 4, which is LOD 3, a little bit confusing, will be all the way, down here somewhere. So you're really not going to notice it much at all. So that's important to keep in mind what distances away from the camera you will actually be You will actually be seeing these objects when you're creating them, because you don't need a lot of detail for the lower LODs. Anyway, once you've created your lower LODs, and I'll show you a little trick. It doesn't quite work as easily as I'm going to make out, but it does help you with starting your LODs. So let's just go LOD 1, and I'll call it temp, just to give you a bit of a demonstration. And so this is 152 LODs, triangles, sorry. Now we're going to make LOD 1 out of this, and we probably want to try and get to half or below that if possible. Since this already starts out very low already, I mean 152 triangles isn't a lot, so it's kind of hard to cut it down even further. But if you're talking about a locomotive and there might be 100,000 polygons on there, you want to get that down pretty quick to say 20,000 for the next LOD, 5 for the next, and say maybe nearly 500 or less triangles for the final LOD. And remember how far away you are looking at these objects. So 500 polygons or less at that distance, you can make it look exactly the same as the highest LOD level. It's not a hard thing to do because you can't really see much with a couple of pixels. So the tip for this is in 3D Max Studio 2006, they have a modifier called Pro Optimizer. So if we select that and we keep material boundaries, we keep the textures UVs, and we keep the UV boundaries. So if you tick all those, it's going to keep everything mapped the way we want it to, and we go calculate, and it's only going to drop so far down because there's not a lot of triangles here, and it's also going to try and maintain the texture mapped to whatever polygons it keeps. So if we drop that by 50%, so you can see it's not quite 50%, so 120 is as far as it's going to go while maintaining the structure and look or UV mapping of the object. So that's about as far as you'll get with this particular object while keeping the UV boundaries on there. Okay, so for the next LOD, you might want to go back. We'll clone the original. We'll make this LOD2 temp. Load him up. We'll go and add the Pro Optimizer again modifier, and we'll just keep the material boundaries and we'll keep the textures, but we won't get the UV boundaries. We'll take them off. So now parts of the texture is going to spill over to other parts of other polygons, which is okay because when you're back here, you won't notice it so much. Hopefully not at all. So let's go to calculate that, and we'll drop it down by 50%. We'll see what we end up with. So now we're at 74 triangles. And if you zoom in, you will notice there is a difference, definitely, of where the UVs are mapped and what polygons are getting cut. So you can see there is a difference there. But when it's back here, you won't really notice it as much. So it all depends on what we look like in Trainz. That's the main thing. But you can get some pretty quick results with this Pro Optimizer. And again, you'd be dropping that down even further for your final one. So even if we said 20, that takes it down to 26 triangles. And at this sort of distance, you're not going to tell the difference between 26 triangles or 152, provided the shape stays the same. So that's how you can easily or quickly get rid of a lot of polygons on your objects. You may need to edit the mesh and fix it up a little, but that's definitely gonna help get up to speed a lot quicker with your LODs. Excuse me. Okay, so now that we've got our LOD levels, I'll just delete the ones we just made. You can select all these, make them visible. Go File, Export, and find the place you're going to export them to. I've already made these assets to speed up this tutorial, but you'd put them in a folder somewhere, and you would export them as FBX files, and they are under here. So I've exported that as an FBX file. Override, and then you would use well, it doesn't have to be binary, but binary FBX 2009 or the version of Max you're going to import these into. So once you've done that, I will close that down. We'll keep it open just in case we need it, but we don't need this anymore. I've exported them, just say. I load up my version of Max that I have a Trainz exporter for. I've got the Trainz exporter installed in this particular version. I'll open my previously saved Max file. So what I've done here is I've gone File, Import, and then I would import those FBX files. Open that up in here. It would then do want to import these files, yes, and then you'd end up with a list of whatever you exported in the new Max. Well, in the old Max version, I would say. So here we are. I've done 4 files I've imported, and I've copied them and made new materials. So we've got a winter version of the asset as well. So I've got both my materials in here. We're only talking about LOD at the moment, so I'm not going to go into how materials are made and all that. There's plenty of tutorials that we've done already to explain that. So we've got our materials, we've got our LOD levels, and we've got LOD 0 here. So we just make sure that that is visible, or that one's the only one selected. But as long as it's visible and the others are not visible, you can now start exporting these. Provided you're happy with the LODs, we go File, Export. We find our folder where we want to export them to, and we go ahead and we export this one as LOD 0. And then once we are happy with that, we would go and find LOD 1, and so on and so forth. We would export this out. We would export it out as LOD 1, and then once we've done LOD 2 and LOD 3, we would come back and apply the winter material, provided you want a seasonal asset. You mightn't want a seasonal asset, but this rock, I thought it was good to put a seasonal asset in there, so we come back and we do the same thing with we'd apply a different texture to it, and then we'd go and do the same thing, export, and we'd name this one something different like LOD0W for winter. So now we've got, if we look at that, we've exported our level of detail out into our asset. If we take a look at our files in this asset, we have LOD0 and LOD0 winter, LOD1, LOD1 winter, LOD2, LOD2 winter, and LOD3 and LOD3 winter. So LOD0s, LOD1s, LOD2s, and LOD3s are all the same triangles for each other, except they've just got different materials. And the materials we're using, one's a diffuse, one's diffuse summer, one's a diffuse winter, and the other one is a normal map with our specular map built into the alpha. And hopefully it looks similar to this rock in game. So that's what we've got so far. Now here comes the magic where we have to configure the level of detail in our config.txt file. Excuse me. Now, let's have a read. Hopefully you can read this. In this particular example, and this is called Rock 1A, there is an example I'm going to show you next called Rock 1B. In Rock 1A, we're going to make the LOD in the config file. We're going to put the LOD in the config file. The tags that we need will go directly in the config file. And I'll explain what we're going to do with LOD 1B, which is this one. We are not going to put the LOD directly in the config file. We're going to make these .lm files, and that's another way of doing level of detail. We'll come back to that in a second. So Rock 1A, we've opened up our config file for it, and in here we have a tag called mesh detail level count. This is how many different LODs you have, or how many different .im files per season that you, if your asset is seasonal, that you're going to want it to transform into. So mesh detail level count 4. That's what we've got. LOD 0, 1, 2, and 3 for summer there. And obviously the W's are for winter. There's 4 of them. So we've put that as 4. Then in the mesh table itself, we've named it whatever we really want to, but we've gone with LOD 0. And it's mesh season 0, which is summer. And the mesh is there referencing LOD 0. And there's this important one here which says LOD level 0. That's what it is. Then if we take the next one, which is LOD 1, keep in mind we can call this whatever we want. We've just decided to call that one LOD 1, LOD 2 for simplicity. In LOD 1, you'll see there's LOD level 1, and it's also referencing the LOD1.im file, which is the mesh file. Mesh files LOD 2, LOD level 2, mesh files LOD 3, LOD level 3 for LOD 2 and 3. And again, we've referenced, or we've put in these 4 for summer because of the seasons, and then we put these ones in for winter. Exactly the same, but we're just calling a different mesh file, and we're telling it which LOD level to use for the winter ones as well. So it's going to know by the information you've given it here when to show the LOD level 0, 1, 2, and 3 in game based on the settings that the user has used as well. So if the scenery detail is set to low, it'll know when to show the low one, probably a lot sooner than it would if the scenery detail was set to ultra, for example. So anyway, that's how you put your level of detail in the game for it to be directly in your config file. If you want to have a little bit more control, I guess, over your LODs, which is, it's not necessarily a great thing, but you can either let Trainz deal with it, which is that way of doing it, which I just showed you, or this way actually gives you a little bit more finer control by tweaking the numbers a little bit for yourself. So in here, this is Rock 1B, and this one hasn't got that, for example, it hasn't got the mesh detail count. Okay, so we'll just put this one over here for reference. This is Rock 1B. It doesn't have the mesh detail count in there, so we've removed it. It then comes into only have 2 different containers. One's for summer, one's for winter. Again, you can name these whatever you want. And under the summer one, it has the seasons, the season summer, and then it has a mesh tag, and we're going, we called it body. You can call it whatever you want. Body.lm, and it's an LM file, and you can look at the wiki to find out what the LM files are. We'll explain them in a minute. And then it's just the same things that were in the other file, auto create, and it's scaling it when you place it down. So for the winter version, it's saying this is the season winter, and it's referencing the body w.lm file, which is another LOD file, which we're about to have a look at. So they're just referencing files we're now about to go have a look at on how we can set our LODs up for Rock 1B. So if we drag this over here, let's have a look at those files now. So body.lm.txt. So you don't need, for just for information's purposes, you don't need the .txt on the extension here. It's just .lm. So we jump in here and we go open the LM file up for body, which is the summer version. And in here, and let me just bring up the information just so I get it correct. I'd hate to give you the wrong information. We have a breakdown here. So you can type in trainz.lm wiki and it'll come up here. So we have our file which looks pretty similar to this. Version 1 must be included, but for internal use only, leave as value 1. So if you're updating it, I guess you update this, but otherwise just, most of them will be version 1. The offset that prevents popping between two levels of detail repeatedly. So that's a small offset you want to set either from 0.01 to maybe 0.04 or 6 or something to prevent any LOD levels popping rapidly. A low number there is quite appropriate. The calculated point, or the center, the position where the level of detail is calculated from. There's a few different options here, but center is probably going to be your default there. Center, near or far. Center is probably a good one. Again, you'll need to play around with it, but that's probably a good default, which is what the default is. A level of detail modifier says leave it 1.0, so that's what we're going to do. Animation cutoff. The level of detail where animation stops to screen width. 1.0 equals full screen, 0.5 equals half screen, 0.0 equals never stop animation. So we're going off these three values here, which you're about to go into. We're going off the percentage of screen space. So if we say from this corner here to this corner here, the full screen is 1, that's 100% of your screen width, right? You're not going to want to cut animation off at 1.0. That's not a good idea. Otherwise, your animation will never play. So you want to think to yourself, when am I not going to notice the animation on the screen? So if it's 10% of the screen, which may be about the size of this highlighted, or maybe even smaller actually. If it's 10% of the screen, do I want to cut the animation off then because it's too small to be able to see? If so, then it's going to be 0.1 for 10%. And that goes for the next two things as well, determining what percentage you will be cutting your attachment points off and actually rendering the object altogether. So render cutoff, the level or to screen width where rendering stops. It's no longer visible. So this one here, I'm doing it at 1%. So once that object size that we're rendering becomes 1% of the screen, we're not going to render it anymore, which is going to obviously give us a massive performance boost because we won't be rendering the object anymore. And that's important to put in there. Zero is probably not a great option because most things are not really going to be noticed at 1%. 1%, so 0.01. Because at 15 kilometer draw distance, at 15 kilometers, you're not going to be seeing it if it's way back, even if it's 6 or 7 kilometers. So make sure you probably put a cutoff there. And then you've got your attachment cutoff. the level where cull flagged attachments are dropped. So a cull flagged attachment is something that in your actual model you need to name your. Let's have a look. You need to name your. Oh, we don't have it in here, but if you've got an attachment, say your bogies for your engine or your car, your train car, you'll have underscore cull. You just need to look up what the exact naming convention is for that, and you'll find that anything that has a dot attachment name underscore cull or something along that line, it might be a colon cull, any of those attachment points will start to drop off and not be used at whatever percentage of the screen you set this to. So if it's here it is 10%. So I've got any attachments for this object, which it doesn't have, would drop off at 10%, so 0.1. And this is to get the polygons and the materials down even further at a distance. So when it's 2 kilometers away or 1 kilometer away, and the bogies are still sitting on your locomotive, you don't really need them to show up, because you can have a LOD level that's 2 kilometers away that would actually show everything in the one model. So you can just put a couple of little bogies in there. For example, I might even have something to show you, so I don't just keep jabbering on. Let's have a look. For example, here's the LOD level. Here's the lowest LOD level that you'll find for this particular asset, and you can see that it's got all the bogies. The bogies are attached to the material, the body. So that's going to be seen somewhere like far away. So we'd have the attachment points drop off at this point. So the real bogies, which are let's have a look. Bogey, there they are. So these bogies that will actually be attached to the attachment point of the body. So this body here, which doesn't have any bogies, you'd see them up nice and close, and those bogies would be separate objects attached to this train car's body. But when it gets to a certain size of the screen, using the .lm file, we'd say attachment point cutoffs, anything that's smaller than 10%, we don't want attachments to be around anymore, or the meshes attached to those attachments. So what you'd see is that bogie would drop off. So it's about 10%. The bogies would drop off. This LOD level would be hidden, and we'd show a final LOD level that would contain everything. So now you're getting one draw call because they're all using the one material and they're all from the one mesh. So that's the reason why you drop your attachment cutoffs, and if you still want the object to maintain the same shape with the attachments, you just add it to the one model. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, let us know and I'll explain it further in some comments or another video perhaps. So that's what you're doing there with your attachment cutoffs and your render cutoffs and your animation cutoffs, is you're picking a percentage of the screen for this particular object in which all those things are going to cut off at their specific levels you're setting. So the next one, you're going to have a bunch of mesh containers. And this one, start at the bottom, this one says at 100% of the screen, 1.0, we're going to show LOD 0. At 80% of the screen, once we get down to 80, we're going to switch from LOD 0 to LOD 1. When we get to 20% of the screen, we're going to switch to LOD 2. And when we get to less than 1% of the screen, 7.5% of the screen, we're going to switch to LOD 3. So this gives you a little bit more control over when your LODs should pop in, so that you can tweak them a little bit better. Don't get me wrong, the other way where Trainz does it is still quite good, and there's no reason why you shouldn't use that. But this one you can say, oh well, look, I think my LOD level 2 can't be seen. The level between LOD level 1 and level 2 is not noticeable at all, so I might bump this up to kick in a little bit closer. So maybe 35%, we might drop in LOD level 2, and you still can't notice the switch between these LODs. And that's going to give you a better performance increase, because this might be 20,000 polys and this might be 5,000 polys, and the 5,000 poly one's going to kick in sooner at a 35% width of the screen, and it might only even use one material, perhaps. Who knows? But the more you can tweak this to make it perform better, the better outcome you're going to have with your assets. So once you've done that, you save it out, jump back into our objects, and we'll just have a bit of a look at these within Trainz itself. So once you've tweaked your objects, got everything we need for Rock 1A, which has the LOD levels configured in the config file, and we're going to drop in LOD B, which has the .lm files where the LOD levels configured. So let's drop them back into Trainz. Shouldn't take too long, they're not big assets. And we'll filter on installation date. There they are. And we'll look at the one that has its assets configured in the config, which is Rock 1A. So you can preview your assets, right click preview asset, and that's the object in its highest LOD. We can see the triangle count's 152, that was LOD 1. There's one draw call because we're only using one material. And when I say material, it's how many of these you're adding to it. We've only got that added to our rock of the one mesh. So we're using one material. And the less materials you can use, the better. So 1 is probably the lowest you're going to be able to use, unless you're just putting a color to it, of course. And your triangle count's at 152. So this is rather low poly. But for locomotives and that, you really need to look at these things, see how many animation bones, attachment points it's got, because as you start to scroll out, you'll start to see that the LOD's going to change. And I'm holding shift now here just to slow everything down, but it's very rare that you'll be moving this slow and just focusing on one object in Trainz, since there's so much detail. And we're still at 152, and the draw call is still at 1 because we still have LOD level 1 loaded at this point. So Trainz has still determined that we're going to show LOD level 1 at this point based on my user settings. So hopefully we'll see it change in a second. Still at LOD level 1. It's very strange. Oh, there we go. It has changed. And now it's showing LOD level 2. So I think somewhere around there, it's just... See, I can't even see the actual change. So that's a good thing. If you can not notice your LOD levels change like that, that's exactly what you want. So that's LOD level 2. LOD level 3 is now kicked in because it's now at 74 triangles. And then obviously LOD level 4 is now kicked in at around that. So you can see that you're such... the distances away from the camera really matter when you're modeling these things, because if you're modeling everything this close and you're thinking, oh, it looks really ugly at LOD level 4, it doesn't matter because you can hardly see it in Trainz at that level. So if you want to do a bit of an example of what each of them look like, you can go to the LOD distance, and instead of having it at auto, you can change this to say, what will it look like at 250 meters? And that's what the LOD level is going to look like at 250 meters. What will it look like at 1,000 meters? And that's what it'll look like at 1,000 meters. But you've got to get in your head that you're not looking at it this close to the camera, these LODs. So set it to auto. Make sure the LODs work the way you want them to, and you're getting some good results with your LODs. Maybe you don't need 4 LODs. Maybe you only need 3 LODs, and then that's even less work for Trainz to do for your assets. So that's Trainz automatically doing it itself. And you configure the LODs in the config.txt. The next one we're going to show you is the Rock 1B, and this one's configured in a .lm file. LM file, yes. So this one's rendering exactly the same, except the difference is we've said in 80 when the rock is 80% of the screen, we will kick in LOD 1, or relative to its size, sorry. So we're going back, and you'll probably see this change a lot quicker than you did before. So there, it's changed already. So this is allowing you to determine when the change will happen. And we're back to LOD 0. Let's see if we can just see the change. There's the change. Not sure if you saw that, but there's a small change there that it's determined that that's 80%, and will change down to 120. And then as we get down to 20%, you'll see another change. There's another change. You can see that small change there in the LOD level. And that'll take us down to 74 triangles. And then we'll go to the lowest one, which is another change there. It's probably too small for you to be able to see now, but that is at 7.5% for LOD 3. And then at 1%, we're going to see it disappear altogether. It just won't render, and I don't think we'll be able to get that close, but Trainz will know when it does. So if we went to 2,500 meters, it doesn't render at all, because it's saying, well, it's below that 1% margin that you've set for the render cutoff. So that's another good way of doing it. And either way is fine, provided you're testing this, looking at your triangle counts and your draw calls and seeing that the animation cuts off and your attachment points cut off at the right time. So hopefully this gives you a bit more of an understanding of LOD levels and how to make them in your 3D rendering software, and also how to get these LOD levels into Trainz and test them out to see that they're working correctly, so that you can make better performing assets in Trainz. Now, what we'll also do is we'll take these two assets that we demoed, and we'll put those scenery assets up with the tutorial, so if you want to get a reference as to how they were created, or you need to look over anything or go along with the tutorial, you can. So we'll zip these up and put them online as well. So hope that's helped people out. If you need any more information, please contact us on the forums, and we'll get back to you with comments or more videos. So thanks for watching.